Hello, students. This is lesson 2, and Luba Gentry is here with you. This is the second lesson out of my series, Express Citizenship with Luba. And this series is for people who want to become U.S. citizens. During your interview, you will have actually 2 tests, civics test and English test. And during the civics test, they will ask you questions on history and government. For this lesson, I would like you to get familiar with the United States Constitution, the history of 1800s, the Civil War, and slavery. And to do that, you would need to read some material from the citizenship test booklet, which you can have access to by clicking on this link I provided here. And when you get access to that booklet, you can download it to your computer. And I would like you to read Unit 3 and Unit 5 for this lesson. And I indicated the pages that I want you to go over. This is totally optional. You can read it or you may not, but you will have to study 100 questions for your interview. Again, I provided the link here, which will take you to those 100 questions. For this lesson, I would like you to look at questions 1 through 7, number 10, 65 through 77. Let's look at these questions. I highlighted the answers for you that I would like you to memorize. If you think that some other answers would be easier for you, then feel free to memorize those. Some of the questions have several answers, and all of them are correct. Again, the ones that I think are the easier for you to remember, I highlighted in yellow. Question number 1, what is the supreme law of the land? The Constitution. Number 2, what does the Constitution do? I think 2 answers are relatively easy. Sets up the government and protects basic rights of Americans. Whichever one is easier for you to remember, that's the one you should memorize, okay? Question number 3, the idea of self-government is in the first 3 words of the Constitution. What are these words? Please remember, we the people. Question number 4, what is an amendment? A change. You do not need to memorize what you see in brackets, but if you do, that's fine. So you can say a change to the Constitution, or you can say just a change. Question number 5, what do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? It is the Bill of Rights. Question number 6, what is one right or freedom from the First Amendment? I marked speech, but some people like religion, some people pick press. Whatever you think is easier for you to remember, pick one out of these 5. Question number 7, how many amendments does the Constitution have? 27. Number 10, what is freedom of religion? And please memorize the whole sentence. You can practice any religion or not practice a religion. Number 65, What happened at the Constitutional Convention? Please remember, the Constitution was written. Number 66, when was the Constitution written? Remember the year? 1787. Question number 67. The Federalist Papers supported the passage of the U.S. Constitution. Name one of the writers. I suggest you remember Madison. Question number 68. What is one thing Benjamin Franklin is famous for? U.S. diplomat. Number 69. Who is the father of our country? Washington. Number 70. Who was the first president? Washington. Number 71. What territory did the United States buy from France in 1803? Louisiana. Number 72. Name one war fought by the United States in the 1800s. I picked Civil War because you can use the same answer for the next question, 73. Name the U.S. war between the North and the South. So the same answer, the Civil War. Number 74, name one problem that led to the Civil War. I picked slavery. Number 75, what was one important thing that Abraham Lincoln did? Please remember, freed the slaves. Once again, you do not need to memorize what you see in brackets. Just freed the slaves. Number 76, what did the Emancipation Proclamation do? Freed the slaves. The same answer as to number 75. Number 77, what did Susan B. Anthony do? I like both answers. Pick one which is easier for you to remember. Fought for women's rights or fought for civil rights. So during this portion of the interview, the civics test, they will ask you 10 questions. And to pass this portion of the test, you need to answer 6 questions correctly. The next part of your interview is the English test. And during that test, they will ask you to read, write, and speak English. So they will test you on these 3 areas: reading, writing, and speaking. So they will ask you to read one sentence and to write one sentence. And I provide sample sentences for you. The ones for reading are on the left, the ones for writing are on the right. The sentence for reading, I think, will be a question, and you will read it off of the screen. The sentence for writing, I think, is the answer to that question, and you will have to write it also on a screen using a special pen, a stylus. I will read them for you in pairs. So number 7 for reading will be followed by number 7 for writing. Number 8 for reading will be followed by number 8 for writing. So sentences for reading, you just practice reading at home. Sentences for writing, you should write until you do not make any mistakes. So you should write them as many times as it takes. until you do not make any mistakes in writing. So if you don't read the sentence correctly, the total number of sentences for reading at the interview will be 3 only. And the total number of sentences for writing will be also 3. But once you read one sentence correctly, you are done. And once you write one sentence correctly, you are also done. So let me read them for you. Number 7 for reading. What city has the most people? Number 7 for writing. New York City has the most people. Please pay attention that the name of the city, New York City, has 3 words, and all of the 3 words need to be capitalized. Number 8 for reading. What are the colors of the flag? What are the colors of the flag? Number 8 for writing. The colors of the flag are red, white, and blue. I think the officer will dictate the sentence for writing twice for you. Number 9 for reading. When is Columbus Day? Capitalize both words, Columbus and Day. It's the name of a holiday. Number 9 for writing. Columbus Day is in October. October needs to be capitalized because it's the name of a month. Number 10 for reading. How many states does the United States have? Number 10 for writing. The United States has 50 states. Number 11 for reading. What color is the United States flag? Number 11 for writing. The United States flag is red, white, and blue. Number 12 for reading. Do people come here to be free? Number 12 for writing. People come here to be free. Number 13 for reading. Who elects the Congress? Please capitalize the word Congress. Number 13 for writing. Citizens elect the Congress. And once you are done with that part, the English test will continue with your interview on the Form N400, which is the main form that you use to apply for citizenship. And in this lesson, we are going over parts 6 through 10. You can download Form N400 by clicking on this link I provided for you and download it to your computer. Let's look at part 6, which is information about your parents. Pay attention to the first sentence under the name of the part. If neither one of your parents is a United States citizen, then skip this part and go to part 7. So if none of your parents, not your mother, not your father, are United States citizen, you can just leave this part blank and go to part number 7. But if any one of your parents is a U.S. citizen, you will need to provide some information about that parent, and I'm going to demonstrate for you what kind of questions to expect if one of your parents is a U.S. citizen. Let's say it's your mother. So first of all, they may ask you this question, number 1, at the interview. Were your parents married before your 18th birthday? So were your parents married before you were 18? Yes or no? Also, expect the question like this. Are any of your parents United States citizens? Is your mother a US citizen? Is your father a US citizen? Now, let me show you as an example what kind of information to provide if your mom is a US citizen. So let's look at question number 2, and you may hear that question from your officer. Is your mother a US citizen? So if you say yes, you are going to fill out the information below. If not, then you will go to item number 3. We're going to look at it shortly. So if your mom is a US citizen, you do not need to provide her A number, which is her green card number, since she is already a citizen. She does not have a green card. She does not have A number anymore. You will need to provide her full legal name, including family name or last name, given name or first name, and middle name if she has one. So questions here for you at the interview could be, what is your mother's full legal name? That's in case she is a US citizen. What is your mother's family name? Or what is your mother's last name? What is your mother's given name? Or what is your mother's first name? And what is your mother's middle name? So you're going to have to answer those. The next question will be for item B, mother's country of birth. So they may ask you, what country was your mother born in? Or what is your mother's country of birth? For item C, you need to provide mother's date of birth, begin with the month, then day, and then year. And they may ask you, what is your mother's date of birth? Or when was your mother born? Or when is your mother's birthday? So you will have to tell them the date. Again, that's in case your mom is a US citizen. For item D, you will need to provide the date when your mom became a US citizen, if known, if you know it. So the question they may ask you here is, when did your mother become a US citizen? Or what was the date when your mother became a US citizen? And you will give them the date. Again, whatever you provide in your form N400, that's the information you will need to remember for your interview. And again, if your mom is a US citizen, you do not need to provide her A number. In case your dad is a US citizen, you will have to provide the same information. So you will need to mark if your father is a US citizen or not for item number 3, yes or no. And in case your father is a citizen, you will need to write his full legal name and his country of birth, his date of birth, the date when he became a US citizen, and questions will be the same as questions about your US citizen mom? What is his full legal name? What is his country of birth? What is his date of birth? And what is the date when he became a US citizen, if you know it. Next part we're going to look at is part number 7. It is biographic information. I want you to pay attention to the words that I highlighted in green. Biographic, ethnicity, race, height, weight. These words I explain in English under the picture of the part. And please remember, they will not ask you for the meaning of these words. They will not ask for clarification. You do not need to memorize these definitions. No. But I still want you to know them. That's why I provide explanation in English. So in this part, what kind of biographic information will you have to provide? Number 1, ethnicity, and please mark if you are Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic or Latino. And they may ask you, what is your ethnicity? So you're going to say, I'm Latino or I'm not Latino. Or item number 2, they may ask you, what is your race? And mark one of the races or all that are applicable to you. White, Asian, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaska Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. So they may ask, what is your race? For item number 3, you will need to mark your height in feet and inches, but the question here can be, what is your height or how tall are you? And you're going to say 2 numbers, 5, 6. So only 2 numbers will work to answer this question, okay? And these numbers you can find on your driver's license. For item number 4, your weight, they may ask how much do you weigh or what is your weight? And you're going to say the whole number. You can look at your driver's license, or if you know it, you can say the number by fact. So in pounds, I'm going to just give you an example. 150 pounds, or you can just say 150. For the eye color in item number 5, they may ask, what is your eye color? And you just need to mark 1. And for number 6, you're going to mark your hair color. And the question here can be, what is your hair color? Next part we're going to look at is part number 8, information about your employment and schools you attended. Please pay attention to the words I highlighted in green. Again, you do not need to memorize the definitions of these words. The officer will not ask you for clarification. But I still want you to know these words. That's why I provide them below the picture of the part that we are looking at. Okay, so the words for this part I want you to know are employment, employer, employed, attend, attendance, occupation. Now let's look at the instructions below the name of this part. So information about your employment and schools you attended. List where you have worked
or attended school full-time or part-time during the last 5 years. For people who are applying on the basis of being married to US citizens, you will need to provide information for the last 3 years. Let's look at the next sentence. Provide information for the complete time period, include all military, police, or intelligence service. So if during the last 5 years you served in the military or police or intelligence service, you will need to disclose it as well. Begin with providing information about your most recent or current employment, studies, or unemployment, if applicable. So you begin with your current situation, which is now. If at the time of your application, when you apply for citizenship, you are employed, then you will need to provide the name of your employer. If you are in school at the time when you apply for citizenship, you will need to provide this school name. If you are unemployed, you will need to write unemployed. So again, you begin with your current situation. Provide the locations and dates where you worked, were self-employed, were unemployed, or have studied for the last 5 years. So for each item in this part, you will need to provide the address of your employer or school or the place where you were unemployed, which is probably your address, right? And you will need to provide the dates when this situation began and when it ended. Okay. Now, so if you are employed, you will need to provide the dates when you started working for that employer and when you stopped. If you are unemployed, provide the dates when you got an unemployment and when it stopped. And if you are in a school, provide the dates when you started attending the school and when you stopped. So if you worked for yourself, type of print self-employed. So if you had your own business going, you're going to type self-employed for the name of the employer. If you were unemployed, type of print unemployed. Okay, so unemployed for the name of the employer if you were unemployed. If you need extra space, use additional sheets of paper. So in this form, they only have like 3 items for you to disclose your employment, unemployment, self-employment, or schools. If during the last 5 years you had more of the items or for employment, unemployment, or schools, then you will need to use additional sheet of paper. And the same for people who are applying because they are their spouses are US citizens. You will need to provide information for the last 3 years, but if you need more space, then you will have to use additional paper. Okay, so let's look at each item. They are all the same. Again, you begin with your current situation, right? So at the time when you apply for citizenship, what is your situation? Provide the name of the employer if you are employed, or the name of the school if you go to school. If you are self-employed, type self-employed. If you are unemployed, type unemployed. The question they may ask you here is, are you currently employed? Are you currently going or attending any schools? Do you still work for, or do you still go to school? And they are going to say the name of the school. If you said you are unemployed, they may ask, are you still unemployed? If you are currently, or at the time when you provided the information, if you were self-employed, they may ask, are you still self-employed? The next part is the address of the school or your employer, and they may say, what is the address of your school or employer? And regarding the dates, they may say, when did you start working there? Or when did you start going to that school? For the date 2, they may say, are you still working there? Or when did you stop working for? When did you stop going to school? And for your occupation, they may ask, what is your occupation? What is your job? What is your position? All right, so these are the questions to expect for part number 8 regarding your employment or schools. Next part is part number 9, and this is about your travel or about time outside the United States. Again, the words that I want you to pay attention to, or special attention to, are in green. And once again, they will not ask you for explanations or clarification or definitions, but I still want you to know these words. So they are outside, leave left, return, and backwards. Now, what kind of information do you need to provide here, and what kind of questions to expect here? So time outside the United States means that you travel out of the country. And if you look at question number 1, it says how many total days, 24 hours or longer, did you spend outside the United States during the last 5 years? If you apply on the basis of being married to a U.S. citizen, you will need to provide information for the last 3 years. Now, in this, for this item, you will need to calculate the total number of days for all of your trips during the last 5 or 3 years. So you will have to add them all together and put the number in here. And again, they may ask you, so how many total days were you outside of the United States during the last 5 years? Or how many total days did you spend outside of the United States during the last 3 years? Next one, item number 2, how many trips of 24 hours or longer have you taken outside of the United States during the last 5 or 3 years? Sorry, this time you're going to count how many times did you travel outside the United States. And it's going to be as many times as you see items put in this table. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever times. Okay, so that's how many times you traveled outside the United States. Item number 3, list below all the trips of 24 hours or longer that you have taken outside the United States during the last 5 or 3 years. So please remember, if your trip was very short and you went to Canada for a few hours, you stayed there like 12 hours or something between 12 to 24, or the same with Mexico, you just went there for 6 hours and came back, you do not need to list them here. Okay, so it's only in regards to the trips of 24 hours or longer. Once again, for people who apply on the basis of being married to US citizens, you will need to disclose that information for the last 3 years. And pay attention to this sentence. Start with your most recent trip and work backwards. So you are going to begin with the trip you made recently or last, and then you go back in time. Where were you before? Where did you travel before and before that? And if you need extra space, you are going to have to use additional sheets of paper. So for each trip, what kind of information do you need to provide and what kind of questions to expect? The first one, the first column is date you left the United States. So when did you leave the country? The date when you left the country. Next one is the date you returned to the United States. So when did you come back? And you will have to go through your records. You will have to maybe look at your passport for the dates. The questions here can be, when did you leave the United States? When did you return to the United States? Or when did you come back? Now, for each trip, you will have to mark if the trip lasted 6 months or more, yes or no. And the question here can be, did this trip last 6 months or more? So yes or no. Next one, you will need to disclose what countries you traveled to. And the question here can be, what countries did you visit? Or what countries did you travel to? And the last one, you will need to calculate how many total days you were outside the United States. So how many days did that trip take? And the question here can be, how long did this trip last? How many days did you spend outside the United States during that trip? Now, after you put information for all of the trips, you count how many trips you had and count how many entries you made here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you put it in number 2. When you add all of the days together, the total number you're going to put in number 1. And again, if you need more space, you will have to use additional sheet of paper. Please remember that no matter what your situation is, no matter what the basis is for your citizenship, you should not be absent from the country, from the United States, 50% of the time. So 50% of 5 years is 2.5 years. 50% of 3 years is a year and a half. Okay, so let's look at the last part for today, part 10, information about your marital history. Once again, the words that you see highlighted in green, I provide below the picture of this part. And I want you to know these words. And that's why I provide the explanation in English. But at the interview, they will not ask you for the explanation, clarification, or definition. Okay. All right. So, what is this part about? This is information about your marital history or your family status. And the first question they may ask you is the same as you see in the item number 1. What is your current marital status? It can be single or never married. It can be married, divorced, widowed, separated, or marriage annulled. So you know what it means married, divorced, right? So people were legally not husband and wife anymore, not spouses anymore, and the decision was made by the court. Widowed is one of the spouses dies. Separated means you're legally still married but not together. And marriage gets annulled in case it was a fake marriage. So people were not really husband and wife or spouses, but they pretended to be ones. And if it gets investigated, then marriage gets annulled. Now, for people who are single, if you mark single, you can skip this part and go directly to part 11. So if you are single and have never married, go to part number 11. I'm going to talk to people whose marital status is either married or divorced, widowed or separated, or marriage annulled. So for you, you will have to fill out part 10. And let's look at item number 2. If you are married currently or right now, is your spouse a current member of the U.S. Armed Forces? Is your spouse in the U.S. military? So please mark yes or no. Next one, item number 3. How many times have you been married? Including annulled marriages, marriages to other people, and marriages to the same person. So you will have to put the number here once again, how many times. It's not how many years, it's how many times have you been married. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one is item number 4. If you are married now, provide the following information about your current spouse. So you will have to provide your current spouse's legal name, last, first, and middle if applicable. You will have to provide in item B current spouse's previous legal name if they had any. In C, other names used by your current spouse, including nicknames, aliases, maiden names, if applicable. And the questions here can be for item A, what is your current spouse's full legal name? For item B, did your current spouse have a previous or different legal name? For item C, what other names has your current spouse use? Or are there any other names used by your current spouse, including nicknames, aliases, and maiden name? Item D, you need to provide your current spouse's date of birth. So the question here can be, what is his or her date of birth? Or when was your current spouse born? For item E, you need to provide the date you entered into marriage with your current spouse. So that's the date of your marriage. And the question here can be, when did you marry your current spouse? Do you remember the date of your marriage? When were you married? Next one, item F, and I already marked the answer here. For people or spouses who live together, you can just write, instead of the full address, you can write with me if you live together, because here you need to provide current spouse's present home address. And the officer may ask you, so where does your spouse live? And you can just say with me, what is the address of your current spouse? Where does your spouse live? And if for some reason they live in a foreign country, it can be for any reason, you will need to provide the name of the province or region, postal code, and country name in these 3 sections. In G part, you will need to provide current spouse's current employer or company if they are employed. So the question here can be, who is your current spouse's current employer, or what company does your spouse work? Okay, if they do not work, you can put unemployed, or you can put NA, not applicable. Next part, question number 5 is your current spouse a US citizen? Yes or no? And if it's a no, then you can skip it, part number 6, and go directly to part number 7. If you marked yes, then you will need to provide some information in item number 6. So if your current spouse is a US citizen, you will need to answer this question. A, when did your current spouse become a US citizen? At birth, which means he or she was born here in the United States, or other. Other means he or she is a citizen through naturalization or through the same process that you are going through now, through paperwork, and you're gonna have to mark this part in here. Now, for item B, you need to provide the date your current spouse became a US citizen, no matter if it's at birth or other reason, okay? So if your husband or wife were born in here, you will need to provide their birth date in here, okay? If they became citizens through naturalization, you provide the date when they got naturalized in here. Item number 7 is for people whose current spouse is not a US citizen, and you will have to provide current spouse's country of citizenship or nationality. And the question here can be, what is your spouse's country of citizenship, or what country was your husband born in, or wife? What is his or her nationality? Now, if they are not citizens and they are here because they have a green card or they are lawful permanent residents, you will need to provide the green card number in item B. Okay, you do not have to memorize it. In item C, if they are green card holders or lawful permanent residents, you will need to mark lawful permanent resident. If they are here because they have a visa, you will need to provide it in item which is called other. So you will need to give their visa number in here. And the question here can be, is your husband or wife a lawful permanent resident? Or what is his or her immigration status? So that is about your current spouse's information. Let's look at item number 8. This is about your spouse's other marriages. And the question here is, how many times has your current spouse been married? How many times? So if your spouse was married before, you provide the number of marriages here. How many times has your spouse been married, including marriage to you? Okay. And if your spouse has been married before, you will need to provide information about your current spouse's prior spouse, ex-spouse. And it's going to be their ex-spouse's full legal name, immigration status, which is U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident or any other, their date of birth, country of birth, country of citizenship or nationality, their date of marriage to ex-spouse, and date when marriage ended with ex-spouse. And you will need to provide the reason why marriage ended, or how my current spouse's marriage ended with prior spouse. Was it annulled, divorced, or spouse deceased, means died, or any other reason? So that is about your spouse's prior marriage. In item number 9, you will need to provide information about your ex-spouse. So if you were married before, provide the following information about your prior spouse. And if you have more than one previous marriage, provide that information on additional sheets of paper. And again, the information you will have to provide is the full legal name of your prior spouse or your ex-spouse, their immigration status, U.S. citizen, lawful permanent resident or not, your ex-spouse's date of birth, your ex-spouse's country of birth, your ex-spouse's country of citizenship or nationality, date you married that spouse, and date when marriage ended. And you will have to disclose how marriage ended. Was marriage annulled if you got divorced, or your spouse deceased, or any other reason. So that's all for you for today for this lesson. If you have any questions, please call me or text me or email me.
And I hope I will see you at the next lesson.